Wankaya Hinkson and Vonda Morris are the hair and makeup department heads, respectively, of the series Lawmen Bass Reeves on Paramount Plus. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. I want to start with a question for both of you, which is the series is built around a real historical figure, Bass Reeves. How much did either of you know about this character, if you knew of him at all? Because I certainly did not before I watched it. Wankaya, let's start with you.
For me, I didn't. When Vonda introduced this project to me, I had no idea, honestly, about Bass Reeves or his story or just any of the myths, I guess that you'll say that comes along with it being the Lone Ranger and all this other good stuff. I had no idea. So walking in the door, I definitely knew that I had to do extensive research to first find out who he was. Then, once we started that process is who's his family, what's his journey, what's his story, where is he from, what's the people around him, all that good stuff. I had to do a deep dive research in trying to figure out who is this Bass Reeves. And then finding out, I realized how much of an incredible man he was, and wanted to make sure that I shared his story in the most authentic way that I could. And just having a genius as a makeup designer alongside a genius as a costume designer, Isis, Vonda, by my side, it was a process to execute, but we did it. I feel like we did it great. So that was my journey on Bass Reeves.
Yeah, Vonda, how about you?
Well, David and I were working on a project in Canada when we first started talking about Bass Reeves. So I had the opportunity to kind of get to know who he was prior to the project. And, it was exciting because this is the second time I got a chance to do such an iconic figure with David, because prior we did Martin Luther King for Selma. So, David and I collaborated about it, like long before it even got ink. So we were just trying to make sure, he wanted to make sure that it was as authentic as possible. And so what David did was he allowed me to build a team so we could go in there and form a team that would be able to kind of see the vision and be able to work together and come out with such great work that you saw the project. I really think it was just some phenomenal work that we did on there. It was because we were able to collaborate together. And that's why that helps when you're able to form a team. So we can just all be united in one and making that vision come to reality.
Absolutely. It really does leap off the screen. And I wanted to ask you both too about, in that research and learning about this character, we do have some photographs of the real Bass Reeves, which is remarkable. How much did you look to those and try to, be historically accurate, but at the same time, bring your own style and make sure it came across as modern while also, period authentic? Vonda, let's stick with you.
Well, what I did, we had different phases for Bass. First, I wanted to get David, because, we're living in the 2000s, so we wanted to change his teeth. That's a big way to put him back in time, because now everybody have perfect teeth. So I had my dental prosthetics guy, Gary. He's great. He was able to make some teeth that really gave David a different look. So he was able to hold his mouth different and to create a different, in working with David is such a phenomenal experience, because I get a chance to see him transform in so many different ways and on so many different projects. So for me, I had to also keep in mind that these two iconic figures kind of had some of the same features between Bass Reeves and Martin Luther King with the mustache. So it was kind of, for me, I would have to sit back and look and go, oh no, he's not looking like King, or what can I do to make sure he doesn't look like that? So that was one of the big things. But to be able to take him from young Bass to older Bass, I had 3 different mustaches. So we could transform him and build up to the iconic figure that we're all used to seeing. So Wankaya and I had the privilege of, in the same day, taking him from the very first scene to the very last scene of the day. So, and I also had to take that in, change the structure of his skin in a non-prosthetic way. And I had a certain technique that I used to age him and also bring him back to the youthful stage within the same day.
Yeah, Wankia, how about you?
So the transformation was honestly amazing. I think no one knew the weather that was going to be thrown at us. So we had to make a lot of last minute changes really fast. Well, in this one instance, we planned on shooting episodes 1 through 3 at the beginning of filming, and we'll be finished with 1 through 3. And we decided that we would cut his hair to the lower iconic, of course, look that you guys know Bass to have, with the signature part, which Vonda mentioned before, with it not being a side part or like dead in the middle, but kind of a little off center and more like a swirl or a birthmark, in a sense that it kind of just parts open, kind of giving it that illusion. But weather had another plan and decided that we would have an ice storm. And in the ice storm, we had to switch the schedule around. And switching the schedule around, the haircut came sooner than we needed it to come. So at that point, we had to think quick, of course, and make a wig that was identical to his hair. So through the snowstorm, I traveled to David, got him fitted, and caught a flight to LA, met with the wig maker associate, Rob, who literally saved my whole life, I feel like, that week, but got it over to Rob. I think maybe in 5 or 6 days, him and his team customize a strand by strand wig that would work identical. Once we cut it and shaped it, I used different hair. One place was called Mercy Hair Extensions. I got a lot of the texture hair pieces from her company, and I got 3 different textures to match exactly to what David's hair texture is, because it kind of gives you something a little bit different in each section of his hair. And they were able to make the wig. We got it back in enough time, and we was able to film simultaneously with the wig being in one scene, and maybe when he opens up the front door, and or when he gets to the front door, it's his natural hair, but when he walks through the door, it's the wig. So it executed well, and worked out. So that was, I think, one of the major things that we wanted to make a staple for the signature Bass look. So we had to make sure that I was able to execute it. So that was that little, that was one of the little tasks throughout our process. So what was it, 5 or 6 months of filming, Vonda?
Yes.
Yeah, that was one little obstacle within the 5%. That's one wig out of the 100 plus, I think, that we had to end up customizing. But David's wig was the only one that we had to outsource. The rest of them I did in home. I made all the different hair pieces for all the rest of the cast members, and built out their characters based off of that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you both about the weather conditions, because I know, I mean, obviously you're working out in nature, these vast kind of sweeping, plains and various locations. Vonda, what was that like for you in terms of how often are you doing touch-ups? It's tremendously hot. It's frigidly cold at times. I mean, it seems like, compared to, shooting on a soundstage, this presented unique challenges.
Well, for me, I think that weather just enhanced the experience, because I was carrying a lot of hats, between effects and makeup and working with Wankaya, just making sure the passion of it was right, that the authenticity of it was right. So my eyes was everywhere. Weather, we had all types of weather. I mean, from having to stop because we had to get out of there because of the flood, trailers underwater, just all kinds of experiences. But the weather, to me, the experience outweighed the weather, because I was able to, from the time that, if you watch the series with Bass, we had to build his character up, and there was once where they wanted to show him really aged, and in that he had I had to hand lay the hair on his face where he was, he had the gray hair and the beard just coming in. And I hand laid that every day. And so it was like the continuity of that with the weather, with the heat on it. I don't know how I managed to get it to stay, but when you're out there and you're dealing with weather, your brain is just constantly thinking of what can I do. You have every brand of glue spray because you want to make sure whatever you're using is going to work. And listen, as you go out there and you do this, it's still a learning process because even when you think you know, the weather will tell you that you really don't know. So you have to adjust to the weather. And we did it. Everything that came up against us, weather, changing of schedules, all those things, we were able to conquer it. And that was the beauty of it all. So when I say that the work and the experience outweigh the weather, I would do it all over again.
All over again. I agree. Through the rain, through the snowstorm, through the lightning strikes, through the sand winds, all of that good stuff. I'll do it all over again.
It's remarkable story of how much went into crafting this series. And when I spoke to David, we talked about, he said it's shocking to him that nobody has really crafted a kind of John Ford like film of Bass Reeves. He's such an incredible figure. Wankaya, I wanted to start with you and ask, did you revisit any of those kind of classic Westerns to get ideas for style and inspiration? But also what's so special about this series is it's a very, it's 6 or 8 parts. I think it's 8-part series. It's 8 parts centering, it's a frontier story and a Western story, but centering on a Black character and on a Black family, which is so important and different from those kind of Hallmark Westerns that we know. So how much did you look at those, but also know you wanted to put your own kind of stamp on the genre?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm a big researcher at heart. I love vision boards. I love collecting history. I love history, period. I mean, since I was a child, I always was told, you don't know where you're going unless you know where you're from. So it was a big thing for me. History is a big thing for me. So I was working on a project at the time when we were initially was supposed to first start back in, I believe it was like ending October, November. And it kind of got pushed until January. So while I was in New York, I just went over to the African American Museum. And what I would do is I would just walk through there and take pictures of the pictures that they had inside the museum. What I came across was Google and Pinterest would give you but so many looks. And then once they gave you the looks, they didn't break down the everyday of it. They only really kind of gave you the glam of it, the portrait shots and the head shots and the family portraits, stuff like that, that wouldn't quite work when we're just talking about a casual day as a sharecropper. So I had to do extensive research in finding the right pictures. And then also, once you find even the right pictures, is making sure that you're matching it with their lifestyle. So even for the character Esme, I know once I read her character felt strong and, push, like, one of those women that will push forward, empowerment, all that good stuff. So I wanted to idolize or use someone like Ida B. Wells as an example for a Esme, doing Jenny's character. I knew she was a sharecropper. I knew she had children. She's always, pregnant of some sort. So having hairstyles that was easy to maintain, head wraps, things that they wore out on the field, or even once we, were past slavery, it was something still of covering your hair while you're out so the dirt won't get on it, all that good stuff. But I also wanted the realness of it in saying, once you put a hat on, you usually have dent marks in your hat. So creating those little special details, the sweat on the foreheads with the hair looking greasy and grungy. Esau's character, the fact that he's such a rebel and no time for hair, of course. Just, putting those little fine touch and details when I was building the characters is just from pictures that I found, and also just watching different pieces. and just, you know, picking and choosing which one will more fit our story and putting our little touch on it. So me and Vonda did a lot of collaborating back and forth. I'll say, okay, V, here's this board. What do you think? How you feel about it? She's like, okay, this looks good. Let's push forward. Like, you know, so it was a lot of that. And even just once I seen the costumes, that really, really helped me out, because in my mind, I can say, okay, well, you know, they just out of slavery, so it doesn't cost for too much hairstyling. But when you see her costume gives something different. So it's matching the hair with the costumes and all that good stuff that helped me really create each character and bring them to life.
Yeah, Vonda, how about you in terms of, you know, did you revisit those classic Westerns? And specifically, what about Jenny as a character? You know, we haven't talked about her yet, but she goes through as much of a transformation, you know, throughout these 10, 20 years as Bass.
Well, to get the frame of how this is all, we were all set up. When we start the project, we got together, formulated the team. We had wardrobe, who really was the backbone of it, because they start long before we do with the looks of their costumes and what they're wearing. And collaborating with the showrunner on certain looks that they wanted of Jenny, Esme, Barry, Esau. Once we collaborated with them, just to know exactly the direction that they wanted to go in. For me, I often reflect on my great grandmother pictures, the pictures that was on the wall, because the pictures that we would get as far as skin texture and hair pictures weren't the clearest pictures that you could get. So you would kind of get the shape of it. Then you can kind of like know, your history and, generations of styles that you see in your home, that your parents have. That's what I kind of really based on, because sometimes I would look and you see certain research, but it would confuse you because you don't know exactly what region that was in, where it came from. So when we all got together with these looks, I also took it wardrobes first. Whatever she has, then we'll take the hair and make sure that the hair was compatible to the wardrobe, and then makeup come in, because makeup was a no makeup look. It all depends on what we were doing. But for like Esau and the men, I gave them a weathered look. So that calls for the bronzing of the skin and adding that dirt that looks like it was in the pores. So with the weather and all those things, that helped us formulate these looks to really give the show that authenticity and the texture that it really needed. So once we formulate that and got the team together and we collaborated, it was just like a chain. We were always together, like, you see this, you see that, because the passion of it all. So the one thing that I really appreciate was being able to have that teamwork together, because once you can do that, you get greatness. And Bass Reeves is just a great example of it.
Yeah, it is remarkable work. Wankaya and Vonda, congratulations on Lawmen Bass Reeves. Thank you so much for talking to Gold Derby today.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.